Hello, hi, good morning. I think I didn't know my mic. Hello, hi, good morning, everyone. Um, we are running live for another Immersio sharing session and talks. Today we are accompanied by two amazing uh, women. So we have Celina and also Armani, both running their own initiative regarding the art accessibility, uh, both in Malaysia and also outside Malaysia. So I guess I'm not really in a good position right now because yeah, I lost my voice yesterday. But yeah, we will actually continue with the talk, and I would like to let both of them introduce themselves. Maybe Serena, you can just briefly introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Celina. So I'm going to start by audio describing myself actually. So I'm an Asian woman with black, wavy, medium length hair, wearing a brown wool jumper against the background of a window at night, with a potted plant on the windowsill and a sofa just below it. And I'm the founding director of In Transit, uh, an art platform offering online training residencies. So, a combination of accessibility training and art residency for artists looking to understand how to make their practices more accessible to disabled people. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Selena. And Awani, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Armani. I am a Malay girl wearing a black t-shirt with our square white Natsani logo, and I'm against what should be blue or green, light green wall, but it looks gray in the screen. So I'm the founder of natsani.com, which is an e-commerce site selling art merchandise by uh, artwork by PWD artists. And right now, we are also located in Museum Telecom, where we do workshops and we do events, and we try to make a more inclusive environment for more people to do art.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amani. So I think today our session will actually start with giving both Selena and also Amani uh, a time to share about what they do, amazing stuff. And after that, we'll go into a small open forum kind of session where we're going to actually talk a bit about what we feel about accessibility, especially in Malaysia and also around the world. So I guess we can start with Selena. So Selena, if you wanted to start your presentation and sharing,
Yeah.
awesome.
Okay. Thank you so much. Hold on. Let me just figure this
No
out.
worries, no
Sorry.
worries.
Um, okay. Do you see my screen?
He's sharing. Yes. Now we can see. Yes. Awesome.
Okay, lovely. So in transit, we launched last January, so January 2022, and we have so far we've held two pilot training residencies, which have supported artists from the UK, Spain, Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And currently, after reflecting on our experience and also the feedback from the pilot projects, we are in the midst of amending our program, which will be open again in January. So before describing the program in further detail and also how we support artists to make their works more accessible, I'll share a bit about why I started in transit. So as a curator, I've always been interested in increasing access to the arts. And to me, accessibility is an important yet very overlooked issue, which hinders, who can participate in and also be an audience in the arts. So, a little backstory. When I was 13, I got into an accident, and that led me to be deaf in my left ear. And since I've always wondered how it would be like to experience art if I was completely deaf one day. Sure, I could see, but how would I continue to watch films without being able to hear? And the thought of it was scary. So one day when I was quite young watching TV, I realised that I was paying attention quite a lot to the subtitles, and I realized that I learned to spell and also speed read through that. So I guess my interest in accessibility really stemmed from this. And now that I've been working in the art world professionally for 7 years, I'm frustrated at the fact that accessibility tends to be treated as a last minute add-on feature. So what I mean by that is that it's something one usually thinks about after the exhibition is installed or once the work is done. And I have been in circumstances where, an artist's work had to be modified at the very last minute because it wasn't fit. It didn't meet the accessibility standards of the institution where the exhibition was going to be held. And I've been working with artists, getting them to consider the importance of accessibility in the arts, mostly in the physical space. But it wasn't until COVID, like the peak of COVID, when I became really invested in increasing access to the arts on digital online platforms. So during the time, and I guess also now, people are talking about how accessible art is online, how easy it was for people across continents to communicate and share their works, how we could still experience and buy art, etc. All these art fairs was going on, and it frustrated me quite a bit actually because there is obviously easy access to the arts through nearly every screen, but how much of it is actually accessible? And because it's so normalized, this whole idea is so normalized that we tend to also forget about those who can't afford these technologies. And even if they could, they were not able to access the content because the site or the software was not coded right for a screen reader user. Or, you get older people who lack the confidence or knowledge to use these technologies. So I think until now, I constantly ask myself, what is accessibility? What does it mean to me? And at the time I was doing my master's in curating at Chelsea when COVID hit, and we had to shift our summer show online. And I had a lot of questions at the time, and was doing experimental pop-up shows and window displays at the local Wilco and Asda. They're like supermarkets in the UK. So just to give a bit of context. And I was looking at online exhibitions and frameworks, experimenting with hybrid exhibition formats like mill exhibition paired with online for people who didn't have access or not comfortable using the internet. So it was a lot about audience engagement, and with existing basic knowledge, I experimented here and there and reached out to people, and here I am. So with In Transit, I thought, how great would it be if there was an art space supporting artists or curators on how to make online exhibitions or their projects, their practices more accessible? Because very often you find that these trainings, these accessibility trainings per session are quite expensive, and mostly only institutions or art organizations can afford it. So how could we share this responsibility, curators, artists, and the institutions in collaboration, in tandem with the public? And it's always been in my head as well, like, what if artists could integrate access as a part of their practice, from considering it from the planning stage? And how can access be used creatively and imaginatively instead of it being like a requirement? And of course, in times of COVID as well, when we were wearing masks and expressions are hard to read, and we were relying a lot on gestures, how could we normalize it as a form of non-verbal care? So with In Transit, I guess our training residencies, so yeah, going into the training residencies now, it lasts, well, we're still sort of building on what we learn, but it's always a process. So the training residencies it lasts for 3 months, and it really focuses on process, learning, and experimenting. And I guess that is really the core of how we sort of work. And each artist is provided their own dedicated online open studio space on our platform, where they can share their research, work in progress, and reflections with the public. And, you know, this really encourages documentation, really encourages like them experimenting with all these things and knowing that it's okay if you go wrong. There's no right or wrong either. So it's all about like that, I guess, that curiosity as well. And the first month, it is dedicated to digital accessibility training, where artists will have on-demand access to the training, accompanied with mini tasks as a way to put what they've learned into practice. And in this, it is important that the training is on demand and self-paced, so that it allows the program to meet the different needs, different artists' needs wherever they are in the world. So, you know, we're really thinking about disabled artists, artist parents, and artists who have other commitments. So you might be an emerging artist and you have a job and you can't always have live sessions. So through this process, they learn and implement knowledge and skills in their work, and with continuous feedback from myself and an accessibility specialist. And our program currently, it will be supported with like guidance from seasoned accessibility specialists and also art professionals in the art world here. And in our training, we cover things like, so in that 1 month, it's quite intensive. And we cover things like introduction to accessibility and disability, use of clear and simple language, such as, you know, avoiding art speak and how best to communicate your practice and your work to disabled people and also wider audiences, alternatives for media like image and audio descriptions, and using creative captions, closed captions, open captions, etc., and making websites and social medias more accessible, and also, you know, creating accessible documents and presentations in relation to your portfolios. So as you can see on this slide that I'm sharing here, I have shared photos where our resident artists from the first pilot, they're considering and applying knowledge from the accessibility training in the practice. So on the left, we have Pablo Paololi reflecting on the use of open and closed captions in his moving image work, and he's finally gone with open captions after much reflection. And on the right, we've got Charlie Fitz. She's a disabled artist, and she's applied the knowledge of correctly structuring headings in her website, which, you know, are useful for users with cognitive disabilities. So in these second and third months, artists will focus on developing their work, receiving feedback through one-to-one and peer-to-peer sessions. So like when I say peer-to-peer sessions, we're talking about, say, you might be familiar with the term group critiques if you've gone to art school. So where we, you know, openly share and our feedback with one another in the development of your work. And previously, we've also invited award-winning artists such as Rhiannon Armstrong and Don XYZ, the founder of New Art City, to share their expertise in these peer-to-peer sessions. So all this work is then displayed in an online group exhibition, which concludes the training residency. So I'll share a bit. Yeah. So on the left, on the slide, I'm just showing pictures extracted from the 2 online exhibitions that we've got. So on the left, we've got extracts from the latest online exhibition, In and Beyond the Studio on In Transit. displaying works by Immersio, Arabella Brusin and Latifa A. Stranak. And on the right, you have images extracted from our first online exhibition, 1940 to 2022. And so just on the top, we've got 3 videos by Charlie Fitz, where she's added closed captions in the work, content warning, and also the option to view these videos with audio descriptions, things that she's sort of picked up from throughout the training. And below we have a video by Shah, who's the founder of Filamen and, you know, our host for the talk today, which was accompanied with a voiceover in Malay. And in this work, there is an option to for visitors to download the voiceover script, which has the Malay original text in Malay, and also the translated version in English. So at In Transit, our programs really focus on accessibility, and with this, it is important that, you know, our values and the way we work reflect that. So, for example, we offer access support to our resident artists and understand that, you know, disabled people, like the disabled artists that we work with, may work on crip time. So that is to say that they experience time and space differently to able people. So they, you know, considering the fact that they may use longer hours to do a similar task, or may have varied working times because of the pain that comes with certain conditions. And it is similar to how some people may, like, I guess the idea, yeah, it is similar to how some people may work better at night and some in the day. And in the past as well, we have helped one of our resident artists, Yasmin, to upload posts because she was having cyber exhaustion, you know, traveling here and there as well. And she was creating all these work and researching, but at the same time, she wanted a break from her laptop. So we helped her with uploading her material. So it's about being really understanding to the different needs as well, if your budget and, you know, if your budget and resources sort of allow it. So I guess as an organization, we developed the dialogues around access, and we built on what we learned, like what I've said, what I've mentioned at the start of the talk. So everything is a process, hence, you know, our name, In Transit. And so right now, after the pilots, I thought our framework and of the training and the timings would work well, especially, you know, after all the research and trials. But I mean, the pilot residency in itself, they were all very successful. But when we tried the same framework again in April with the second cohort, mid-career artists this time, artist parents, you know, we realized that we couldn't quite continue with our timeline and programming for the entire year, because, and we had to make changes. We had to step back to make those changes, and thankfully as well, we were in the early stages. So we done that and really rethink and redesign it in a more efficient way to suit the schedules of the different artists. How could we adapt it to artists around the world with different time zones, while still maintaining the quality, educational and also supportive aspect of the program. So this step, I guess, it really made us reflect on what is financially stable for us in the long term, and also to think about what we could improve on and to fix that as much as possible with the resources and funds that we have and are constantly seeking. So I think, you know, when working to increase access in the arts, because we are dealing with people, like, it is important to know that when to take a step back to make these important changes, and know that it is okay to do so, even if it disrupts certain things, and that expectations and reality may not always align. So yeah, I guess that's me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Celina. It was,
Yeah.
yeah, bring back a lot of memories of our first pilot session of the residency. Yeah, we'll talk more about it and uncover that when we go into the forum session later on. I think now we can actually give the floor to Armani to also share a bit about her initiative that she's run at Natsani. The floor is yours, Armani.
Thank you, Shakir. And I'm very inspired by what Celina just shared. I'm really excited to talk to you after this. But let me just share my screen. Okay. So before I introduce what Natsani is about, I will need to explain how we started. So on my screen right now, you see 3 artists wearing our Natsani t-shirts, but they are actually the pioneering artists for a group called We and I Art. And how they started was from 2017, where we had an exhibition called We and Izati. So let me just introduce them first. The one in the denim skirt is Maria Su. The one in the brown berry is Hazik Ismi, and the one in the pink snowcap is Izati Shahrin, which is my sister. So everyone knows how our family is very intertwined in the arts. And I think because of the exposure that my family had and myself, I'm a bit more inclined towards the PWD artists. So what happened was we had an invitation to host an art exhibition with arts intermediary called My Performing Arts Agency. So they had Bora Art Series at Publica, which is an arts conference, and there was space to put in any artist work, and I suggested to invite my sister, and she wanted to bring her friends along. So we haven't had any organization formed at the time, and there were 4 artists. There was Izati, Hazik, Maria, and Yuri Azari at the time. And this exhibition was kind of like a surprise for us because we didn't push that they were PWDs. We didn't push that they were autistic artists. We just said, there's an exhibition, come and see. And a lot of people came, and some even came from uninvited. Like they were not family and friends, so they were from the mall area, and they were good. There was an art exhibition going on. I think it was the Henry Butcher Art Fest as well, and there was a bus that dropped by, and they came to see the artworks, and they said they went around the exhibition and they didn't realize that these artworks were from PWDs until the end of the exhibition, where they read the write-up, and they were very, very keen to see more. So all the parents came together and discussed how we are going to move forward and make this happen again. So that's where Puan Zuraini came in, and she decided to curate an arts festival. And we changed the name to We and I because even though I started with Izati, we all decided that We and I is a good name to promote inclusivity as well. So it was not just about the artists, but also everyone to join them. And we gained some audiences from different PWD communities. So now we're no longer working with autistic artists. We had wheelchair users, we had the deaf community, and bear in mind that in Malaysia, we don't have training on how to work with disabled artists, and we don't at the time, it wasn't as widespread. So we had to learn everything from scratch, and it was very, very interesting because we learned the different needs from different audiences through them as well. And we also realized that in terms of doing physical events and marketing reach, and whether it's online or offline, there's a lot of things that fall between the cracks, and we needed a lot of help from, of course, the venue providers as well. And how that happened was we had a few challenges where we found people who are willing to give us venues, but the venue was not very conducive because of the building, so we had to find different options. And that's where we realized we can't just rely on having venues that are already ready-made for the disabled community. So we had to be very, very creative. So Puan Zraini and the team talked to the venues who were willing to build ramps, who were willing to create special areas for the calm room, for people who need spaces to rest. And it became a successful thing for our community, and we did it for 2 years. So the last WNI Art Fest we had was in 2019, which is in a space called the Go Down, if you're familiar with it. What's interesting about the Go Down is it was built in such a way that it's kind of dangerous to have people on wheelchairs coming in. So we had to really, really think about where we're going to put the ramps, we're going to put the planks. And it was very scary at the first few decisions that Puan Zraini made, because it wasn't very conducive, especially for people with the rare disorders, ones with brittle bone that, you know, even just a small tap could hurt them. So this space had cobblestones, and there were big holes that we had to cover, and getting through the door is another thing. So what we did was we had volunteers come in from different organizations as well, from the Malaysian Rare Disorder Society, from OKU Central. It's a very, very close, very strong support of WNI Art Fest as well. And we had new artists come in and work with us, artists that have never worked with disabled community before. So everyone was learning. And this, let me just share you a clip of what we had during the end of the WNI Art Fest 2019. So I had invited two very beautiful girls who was very open to teach dance to all our communities. How do I play this? Okay. So these girls came in and they were very open, and they shared their knowledge with us, and they shared the fun vibes with us, because in the end of the day, it's just giving all the PWDs a space to let loose and create art together. Okay, so that's how we and I started. When lockdown happened, of course, no one could do anything. Nobody could go to bazaars. We couldn't do our usual WNI Art Fest every year. And it affected the community, and especially my sister. And she, amongst her friends as well, just wanted to stop painting. They didn't feel like doing things anymore. So I needed to give them an outlet, and I decided to start Natseni. And when I did this, I thought about how we can relate this to not just them, but also everyone. So the name Natseni comes from the Malay words Anak Seni, which translates to children of art. And the short name Nak is also a word that means want or need. So Natseni comes either children of art or the need of or want of art. And the reason why I use the word Anak is because in their minds, they're always children. They always have this childlike imagination that is very, very precious, that we as non-PWDs might not see things that they can see. So our goal is to give them the ability to inspire others, to build this community of individuals who can also like not recruit, but more of make this movement. And so Natsani is our official business arm to WNI Art, and our website is natsani.com. And when we started this, it was very, very slow because I didn't intend to make it a big thing. Throughout the pandemic, it slowly started growing, and we had some orders here and there, and we realized that this is something that can be done by anyone, but the quality of artwork is different because we push the art first instead of trying to push like, oh, these are autistic artists, you have to help them. No, we don't do it that way. And after the lockdown happened, we were trying to convene again, and we were trying to get all the artists together again because they need their friends, they need to be doing things together. And it was very difficult because the parents were very skeptical, and their children have started becoming like antisocial, and they don't want to paint anymore. So we just made a small art jam at this co-working space in Sunway Putra. If anyone's been to Sunway Putra Mall, it's a very friendly mall to autistic friends. So they have a space called the Calm Room. So I was confident that we can have this small art jam because they have this space to just retreat to if they don't want to be there anymore. So we had this session where we only had 6 or 7 artists invited, and some of them just came to watch. And the parents told us, oh, my son's only here to watch, like he's not going to participate, but he's just here to see his friends, and then we're going to go eat after this. So there's this, on the screen right now, there's a room that looks like a classroom, and there's a glass panel where there's seats on the other side. So we didn't allow the parents to be inside the room, where we just had the art facilitator, Miss Abby Zain. So she will be with the artists, teaching them new techniques and trying to help them to make new art. And the parents had to sit on the other side. So there's no influence there. And one of the parents were very, very surprised because her son, who has not been painting throughout the lockdown, started painting with his friends. So she had to go have lunch alone with her friends and left her son there to paint with us. And we also had, because Natsani started pushing things on Instagram, on Facebook throughout lockdown, we started getting visibility from new people. And one of our participants, we have never met her before. And this is supposed to be a closed invitation, but I did put a small poster out on IG, and she was one of our followers. And she has also been diagnosed with some, I'm not able to say, but she came and she said, this is the first time that I'm doing an art jam, and the first time that I'm meeting autistic artists. I've never met people from the autism spectrum before. And she found it very inspiring, so she wanted to join us more. And I didn't think that I could reach new audiences at the time. So this whole idea of putting things digitally really opened my eyes, and we started doing more activities. So now, with the help of people like British Council and Yayasan TM, we have new partners, we have new collaborators that we can work with. We are doing art jams every month. With YTM, we have an activity called Thermal Weekends. Every weekend we have activities and bazaars and performances that collaborate with other partners. And we have people from My WIP Healing, who does art therapy for mental health, and she's also advocating for mental health. We have some art teachers who have never worked with disabled community before are starting to open their eyes to, maybe try doing art therapy as well. We also have people from just people who attend our bazaars and people who attend the weekends without having the idea that, oh, I want to work with disabled community. They're just there and they get to experience it. And we noticed that our team is very diverse. We have wheelchair users, we have some mental health survivors as well, and we don't really make it a point to say that, oh, you're speaking to someone who has this and this. we just let them go into the crowd and then see how the crowd reacts. And it's all about exposure, honestly. When at first people meet her, or people meet some of our team members, they kind of slow down, and then after a while they're like, oh, these are just people like me, and then we're doing art together, creating things together. So after a while they get used to it, and even though it's not as viral as we want it to be, but it's a comfortable space where we can grow and slowly build our community. Yeah, so this is our shop in Museum Telecom, and some of our members are also people who have lost jobs during COVID pandemic, people who are just trying to build their career again. So I also have a mother who is an official housewife who wants to start working again, and it's not. And we also have single mothers, and they bring their children. It's a very family environment. And what happened here is that we open up this space to not just our WNI artists, but also to other artists who have products they want to sell, but they can't be there physically. It could be due to logistics. It could be due to some of the parents who are working and they can't focus on building their children's career or building their artist's career professionally. So we try to give them this option. So, use this platform as an experiment and see if this works. Maybe you can do more of it. And now we have more artists coming in. We have on the screen right now is clay art by one of our autistic artists, and also our VNI products. And we also have photographers who make postcards. We have books. We have some even create their own makeup line. And we're constantly giving opportunities for collaboration. So we don't have a specific kind of audience that we only work with. So we're open to any disabilities, even people who have unseen disabilities, which is the theme of our upcoming WNI Art Fest for December. And let me just promote that a little bit. So Ponzarni and the team are working on WNI Art Fest 2022. It will be at Museum Telecom, and it will be themed called the Unseen Disabilities. So we're trying to use the space to make it more into the digital age. So we'll try to create more things online, have people access it instead of having to come physically, because we know that it's very tough to get people to come to the museum and to come any location even. I know that my team member who is in a wheelchair is very, very she's very passionate. So she wants to be here, and we try to help her with logistics as well. So we also give her budget to come all the way, but it's not very cheap. And I'm sure, everyone is aware that KL is not very conducive when it comes to accessibility. So that's one of the things that we're very grateful to have for our venue providers who are willing to put up ramps, who are willing to help us in creating more access for our artists. And I think today's discussion will touch on that as well, how we can do it digitally and also offline. We have a long way to go. And yeah, that's our socials. We have Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So our Facebook and Instagram is nakseni.com, NAKSENI.DOTCOM. Our TikTok, which is shared with WNI's content as well, is wni.nakseni, WEANDI.NAKSENI. Okay, so I will stop rambling now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Armani. It was like a really nice share. I mean, I've seen your space at Museum Telecom and stuff, and yeah, it's nice to see the progress that you guys made, and yeah, it's a really nice effort actually. So I think now we can actually go to our next session, which is the open forum, and we can actually talk more about it. And I think some of you guys already touched some of the points that we were going to talk. I guess maybe we can start with we are talking about the accessibility, the art accessibility, and also digital art accessibility. like what both Celina and Armani was sharing just now. I guess maybe a lot of us actually maybe quite ignorant or don't really actually see it because we don't experience it. So maybe you guys can also give a bit about maybe your own opinion on why is it important to address this accessibility issues. Maybe we can start with Amani first, just to touch base on what you said just now. Yeah, why is it important?
Can I just disagree with you just a little bit? I don't think
Mm.
you're ignorant. I don't think we are ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
I think because we were not taught at a young age and it was not normalized in schools,
Yes.
even to have the integration of our PWD community into our schools. So um, I'm not saying that we don't have any at all.
Mm.
It's just segregated. So my personal experience in school was because Izati had to go to special
Needs.
like they call it class has.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go to the normal class, and I didn't get to see what she was going through, and it was very very disconnected. So even in secondary school, we had to move from Tamantun to Shah Alam because PTDI had class has for primary school, but they didn't have any for secondary school. And the closest place was on the other side. Like we had to move states just to get her to secondary school.
Yeah.
And I realized the problem was when I kept being taken out of my classroom to go find my sister because the teachers were not trained to deal
Mm.
with our PWD. So I wouldn't say that it's not our fault that we don't know how to work with them because
True.
there's no training officially from the ground up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. And yeah, Selena, maybe you can add on what do you think is
Yeah.
important to address this?
So I think I just want to go back to the point where Armani said about, how she was talking a lot about ramps, and accessibility in the physical world. Obviously, it's like building it, you can imagine a building with only stairs and it's not accessible to someone using a wheelchair. And they've added ramps to, they've made adjustments and things. And now everyone could sort of enter. So digital accessibility, I guess, is like that ramp in the digital space. And over 1 billion people, based on like my research, 1 billion people actually in the whole world, they have some kind of disability, whether it's mental health, invisible disability like myself, or like a physical disability, but we are still putting barriers in front of them in the online world. And if so imagine if you built this ramp from the start instead of the day of the opening, of like the building opening, it will be a much safer and better experience. So just to talk about why it's important as well, like, because it's not only useful to disabled people but also in your everyday. So like sometimes you might find yourself like dislocating your shoulder and you can't quite use your mouse and it suddenly malfunction and the stores are closed because it's midnight or something. And what if the site owner actually built the page correctly so you would be able to access this site with just your keyboard? And we call this temporary disability, whereas like you have other cases where people would find themselves in a bit more often, where like I'm sure many of us, we've had to watch a video or film muted because you could barely hear it, and you're only relying on the subtitles or the transcripts because it's so noisy. And we call this situational disability, and it happens very often to me with my ear. So just thinking back about how what if producers didn't put in the effort to include all these things, so would it not be annoying as well? And also I feel like if we start seeing accessibility as more of an opportunity as well, because you often in the context of an artist, sometimes you might have a curator who had forgotten his earphones and, you know, came across your work, and he couldn't watch your art videos because he's on the bus and you didn't have description or subtitles, and he said he'd watch it later, but he forgets about it. So I guess if we sort of normalize it and also think like accessibility is not just a social responsibility, it is an opportunity for ourselves and also for other people. So, you know, just catching those lost moments. So with this, I guess I like to add that, you know, there are so many different disabilities out there and we're all very different individuals. We react to things very differently. So it is important to, I think, keep an open mind and also ask when in doubt. And don't be shy to ask. I feel like that's how sort of people tend to, yeah. So
Yeah,
if you are,
true.
yeah, just it's important to ask what people need. So I guess I'll stop there.
Yeah, again, that point that you said just now, like, you know, don't afraid to ask. That goes back to, you know, our education. I mean, I remember, like, you know, we felt scared to ask because we felt being called wrong, you know. So I guess that's, you know, one of the reason again. It's true what I've been saying just now. Everything actually start from the early education. So if we are actually been educated earlier on, and we actually put out the awareness out there, talking about the accessibility. I think, yeah, it should be much more better inclusive world that we're going to live in. There is actually a reminder of like 10 more minutes that we have left on this call. Maybe I can suggest that we rejoin this call, so that we
Yeah.
can have much more longer time. So let's do that. Sorry about that. So
No,
for
it's
those who are
okay.
actually watching, so yeah, let's rejoin this call
Yeah.
so that we have a much more longer time. Yeah. All right. Hi. Okay, I think we're good now. Okay, sorry about that. I didn't realize that actually Google start, like, you know, have this time limit already. So yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. So again, yeah. Going back to what we talked about just now. I think now maybe we can touch a bit about people who don't have disabilities and how we can actually be aware of it, and like maybe some feedbacks or advice that you can share to artists or creative professionals on how they can actually consider making their work more accessible to people. So maybe Celina, I think you have, I mean, you're running her entire you know, training about it. Maybe, yeah, you'll be much more better sharing about it.
Yeah, sure thing. So I think before I answer this question, I just want to say that, you know, there is this fear and misconception that people have about accessibility, and that accessibility is very expensive. Yeah, sure it is, but, you know, but it doesn't mean it's not achievable if you don't have a big budget. And because accessibility, like I said, I keep emphasizing it is a process, it's a learning process, and we need more hands at the table. So every little effort counts. And I guess the first thing is think about your audience. And I think, you know, Armani has very beautifully touched on that. And I'm speaking in a wide sense here, so covering like physical and digital sphere. Where is this work located? Who is my target audience? Who's going to be coming in? And if you are working with a museum or institution, like think about who the audience is and who you might want to attract as well, and how do I want people to interact with the work. So and what are my values as an artist. So at In Transit we really focus a lot about on we're really we work on the social model of disability, hence like, so social model of disability, just to touch a bit on that as well, it's how you know, disabled people are disabled because we don't make these changes around, and they're disabled by, you know, the design of the society. and it's not really about them having the disabilities, it's about us not making those changes for them. So, and so when I say, like, thinking about that as an artist, what are your values? Like, because an artist today, you don't just make work, you network, you do research, you experiment, you engage with audiences, and whilst having all these other commitments. So I guess think inclusively, and then by thinking in this manner, you start to think out of your studio space, because artists tend to sort of be very confined to their studio space. Speaking from experience, and if you place, so say if you place an installation at a big museum or a big space, for example, that welcomes teens and adults, think about how a wheelchair is there enough space for a wheelchair user to move around it? Do you have trigger warnings, like content warnings for your flashing lights and things? Do you have sensory guides for autistic visitors, so that they are prepared before they go to a specific place? So, and also, when I say it's not expensive, we can talk about using clear and simple language. So that's, I guess, the most basic thing you can do as an artist. Just really communicate your practice quite simply without using art jargons, because, and I'm not saying like dumb it down to the point that it doesn't do justice to your work, but really be mindful about the words that you use to get your message across. So, and in it, and this helps not only with disabled audiences, but also with collectors who are not in the art world. And obviously, in an ideal world, every artwork would be designed and well thought out to be accessible, but that's not always the case. That's not reality. And what may be accessible to one person may not be accessible to another. Like, some blind people, large text might not work for them. Some, like, actually smaller text may work better for them. But it's just thinking about what is best for your diverse audience, and what's best to be included to complement that specific work. And just to share an example quickly, if we've still got time. But one of our resident artists, she told me, like Charlie, for example, she told me she didn't want to include a work description in the exhibition, because she confidently said, I feel like this description would interfere quite a bit about the experience of the video sequence, about her experience as a disabled individual, and that that video was visceral enough for the audiences to understand it. And so I was like, okay, we have to include it one way or another, but we could sort of hide it. So we didn't have the work description clearly displayed under the work or next to the work, but we had like a button where people could download it, and or you could just sort of very briefly describe the piece. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you work with an institution that still requires a work description, for example, you could discuss things, alternatives like having the text in the booklet, or having it somewhere where it's not that easily visible, but it's still accessible, so visitors can still sort of get to it after. So if it's on like a digital platform, maybe have a button that expands these info when you sort of decide to click on it. So yeah, that's me.
That's true. I mean, it's true. I mean, again, going back to the point that you say just now, it's not expensive. I mean, just to add on another button. I mean, and again, with the physical space, if you really thought everything beforehand, before you actually build something, I think that will actually cut the cost even more. So I guess talking about cost and the price of making it more inclusive, I think it comes from, again, people who really don't really experience it. And that's why people say it's expensive, I guess. And yeah, going back to Armani, maybe you can share also your experience working to increase the access to the art. We've seen what you do, and maybe you can also share a bit about your experience. I mean, not only in Malaysia, and also what you've seen outside, like maybe within our region, or maybe certain event that you went around the world. Yeah.
Okay. I have to share a bit of my experience in Malaysia first,
Mm-hmm.
because uh, there has been some interesting situations that my colleagues and I have been put in. So um, I recently went to a forum, and it was a national forum where this building is supposed to be accessible to, be inclusive with all our friends. And I was late, and my friend went there, and she got stuck at a facility where it's supposed to be accessible for people like her. And there was a bit of a situation that I had to call a few people, and then, you know, accessibility physically is one thing, but, I don't know whether you call it accessibility or connection. There was no emergency number on the website of the event that I could call and say, hey, my friend's stuck. Can you go
Mm-hmm.
help them? And I had to go through a vendor that I knew was there. I said, can you call the organizer? And they're like, oh, okay. And then, the issue happened. And also, we noticed that a lot of organizations, because they're not exposed, or they're not educated, let's just put it that way, so they don't provide for those things properly. For example, there will be ramps, but the ramp is like 90 degrees. Like, how do you go on alone? And then um, there will be the railings in the bathroom, but it's in the wrong place. You can't reach it. So things like that. I think infrastructure wise, our contractors need to be educated, and our architects need to be more mindful of how they build a building. In terms of events, let's say on screen, there's always the little box of a person doing sign language interpretation,
Yep.
and it's it's inclusive. Yes, you do that for them, you translate for them. But what happens if you're in an event and there's a Q&A session? Where's the sign language interpreter?
Mm-hmm.
Do I not, if I'm a deaf person, do I not get to ask? Or, and things like that. That it's just a checklist, but it's not fully thought about. But when I was fortunate to get invited to visit the Unlimited Festival in UK, it was a culture shock for me. It's not just the event, but the whole of London altogether. I love the space, the amount of space they have for me to get from the airport to my hotel. And, you know, I had to take the tube for the first time. And I loved looking at the map where they had step-free they had specific symbols for step-free pathways, from either, from the station to the walkway, or from, the specific icons you can follow. And I see everyone, it's not just the wheelchair users, but also I can recognize some, people on the autism spectrum, and they're there independently. And I'm like, wow, in Malaysia, I have not, gotten like the opportunity to, I'm so scared to let my sister to go out alone, because, we don't know what's going to happen to her. And here they're so free, they're so happy. That someone was just jogging and singing to himself, and I'm like, oh, it reminds me of my sister. And when I went to the festival, it was very, like, everything that we and I, Ponzraini, and our team dreamed about was just there. They had festival guides printed out, easy to read. They had a calm room that was the whole floor, in the bottom, where they had really nice calming ambient light, and they had pillows where you can just sit down and rest, and you can listen to podcasts, you can read a book, you can do like coloring just to calm down if you're overstimulated. And every single show that was in that festival had sign language interpreters, had audio captioning, and I knew it was live audio captioning because I was watching this amazing band consisting of people who have Tourette's, and their tics were translated. And I'm like, wow, how did you do that so fast? It was on point, and I was amazed at it. And I was told that we suspect they were using those devices that were used in court, the stenographs. And I said, oh, that's a really smart way. So there are tools that we can use that were not specifically designed for the PWD community, but we can be creative about it. We can just, you know, if you are mindful, like Celina said, be mindful, be aware of your audience. You will find ways to provide for them.
Yeah, true. That's so true, and it's nice to actually hear your sharing about the event. And I mean, it sounds like a really nice event that I would like also to, even not as a disabled art, people, but I would like to actually enjoy the experience of going to that kind of event. Yeah, and Selena, do you also wanted to probably share a bit about your experience on working on the um, the access to the arts, and maybe because just to share to everyone, Selena now based in UK, and while Armani based in Malaysia, in KL. So both of them have probably different kind of experience, but both of them have already been in KL and also in the UK. So yeah, Selena, maybe we can have your sort of like point of your experience, kind of flip from Armani.
Yeah, I fully agree about Malaysia not being the most accessible place, but and I guess in comparison, like the just my point of view, in the UK, accessibility is, people are a lot more aware about accessibility, and it's often talked about and championed by art institutions, organizations, and also funding bodies. So for example, if you apply for a grant with Arts Council England, you have to consider, so as an artist or organization, you must consider accessibility and how you engage with all these different audiences. So that they have sort of created a lot of awareness around this from the policy making and everything, and also based on the UK's Equality Act, public organizations are required to make these reasonable adjustments to their sites to make it more accessible to disabled people. That said, there is a lot of accessibility, and if you've got the big budget and stuff, it is possible, especially like the Unlimited Festival. But my experience personally is that as a grassroots organization is that funding is often an issue, and there has been massive cuts to the visual arts funding here in the UK, which is really unfortunate, really. And accessibility is still quite an overlooked problem, so because there are still stigmas around it, and there is a lot of reliance on public funding, which we may not always be successful in. And so how do we sort of penetrate to corporate funding to have them think more about their corporate social responsibility? And also the art world is obviously focusing on making it a more diverse, equal, sustainable, but there is a lot to do, because there is still when you talk about accessibility, there is a huge exclusion that people don't realize, although it is getting better. What I mean is, like, people are more aware, but there is nevertheless a lack of awareness about disability and the extent of the inclusion. So in the art world, when we talk about accessibility, people immediately think, oh yeah, you're working with the disabled arts community. People don't tend to think about it as like a mainstream thing. And so my experience is there is still quite a clear segregation between the mainstream art community and also the disabled art community. So whenever I introduce someone to In Transit and say we're doing this, they immediately think we only work with disabled artists. And that, and in my head I'm there trying to sort of explain what we're sort of doing. So what we do is that we work with both in an attempt to get them to foster that understanding, bridge that gap, and also have that collaboration. And there are still things, for example, like invisible disabilities, like myself, and people are like, oh no, you're not actually disabled. But people find it quite hard to sort of understand. And also with learning disabilities like autism and things, like, you know, you may look normal or you might have Tourette's or something, and people will be like, oh, you're not actually disabled until you start having tics. So yeah, it's those little things, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, again, what you do at Celina is actually really good in terms of. I mean, for me personally, when I joined the residency, it's, to be honest, I'm not so aware about the accessibility, you know, features that we have in our devices. You know, and when we went through that thing, it was like, oh yeah, actually, I know we have that in our devices, but I don't know what is it for. It's just there for what it is, right? So then I think doing this collaboration like cross projects and stuff within disabled artists and non-disabled artists, that would then create more awareness within the art community itself. And like it's true, there is a specific notion within like disabled artists, for example art exhibition, and also the normal art exhibition and stuff, like what Armani shared earlier on. Like, you know, she tried to push it as non-disabled art exhibition, which people get surprised when they know, oh yeah, the artist is actually disabled, which is, I think, we need to actually again talk about the inclusivity, and also making making it much more normal for us to work alongside each other. Because I think some people who haven't encountered, like for example as simple as blind people, so they are quite uncomfortable, like, you know, to work with another person, like maybe they don't know how to react or to do something with them. And I guess that's the whole point, like to bring people together and like work on something together. And I guess art is a really good tool to start, right? And then it can then morph into, you know, more corporate things and more commercial things and so on and so on. Yeah. Yes, Armani, you wanted to say something?
Just touching on what you're mentioning, I think our issue as a community is that we have a lot of fear. And when people fear something, they don't understand it, it becomes a problem. So first is comprehension, because even when a organization says that, oh yes, we're accessible, or yes, we're promoting inclusivity, do you really understand what it is? Do you really understand what you're providing and who your audience is? So that's one. Breaking that fear is also giving a safe space for all of us, not just the disabled, but for us who are trying to understand them. So we fear asking, like Celina mentioned, well, just ask. Like, it's okay to ask, and I might have used the wrong terms or accidentally said the wrong words. We're all still learning, because in the end of the day, it's what you want to achieve, not so much of trying to prove a point. So disability shouldn't be the first thing that we promote when we're doing work with them. We should be, art is so vast. There's so many things that we should be addressing, not just that.
Cool. Yeah, true. It's true. Yes. Just add on, guys. I mean, like, we will open this for
Yeah,
you.
sorry.
Just open your mic and say something.
She mentioned something about, Armani mentioned something about, using the wrong terms and things. And we just want to touch on that, because, I think the audiences might also realize that, I've been using disabled people, whereas Armani has been using persons with disabilities. And I just want to touch a bit on like how these two terms are equally valid, and we, in just the disability context, we call it like person first identification, or identity first identification. So a person might, identify themselves very strongly as disabled, or and so they call themselves disabled person, whereas like a person might be like, oh, actually that's not for me, I'm a person with disability. So if you sort of got yourself into a circumstance and the person's not comfortable, just apologize and be like, yeah, and just ask what is your favorite, like, preferred term.
True, exactly. Yeah, I mean that's the whole. I mean we touched that earlier on. Like we all scared to be wrong, like, and be called up like, oh, you're wrong. But I guess the community will slowly progress to that where it's much more open and we can actually talk about it and so on and so on, which I think where we are currently. And I think maybe Armani, just to add on what you shared just now and talked just now, you know from your side, what is the progression that we've seen so far in Malaysia, especially because yeah, we're talking about the Malaysian context. What we are, I mean, where we are right now, and what's the progress from the years that you would work on in this field. What do you think about it?
Okay, from my experience, I think we have some progress from before the years, because now I see more students reaching out to Natsani and saying, "Hey, we want to do something for, the International Day of Disabilities, which is in
Nice,
December."
nice.
And before this, we didn't see any of that. Like there was no awareness for mental health. In a way, it is a good thing we had COVID, because then everyone's affected and they're like, oh, now I feel something, I don't know what it is, and then, oh, it's mental health, we have to address it. So you're giving more light to people who are in that community as well. And I can't say that we are there yet, because there's still a lot that we need to do. There's still a lot that we need to learn compared to UK, like not even the rest of the world, but UK itself. Like UK's here, we're still here. We're still, if you're playing games, we're still in rookie level. We're still trying to figure out the map and find the tools. So we're just there. So hopefully we can go to like the advanced level soon. I think one of the best things we can do right now is, apart from creating awareness, because we've already got awareness,
Mm.
we need training. We need people
Mm.
like Celina to come and help us
Yes.
find out like how do we
Yes.
make things accessible, and then we need to learn about tools, or maybe both. Because if we want to rely on the government, which is not even settled right now, we can't do that because it's going to take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So as a society, we need to do it ourselves, because in the end of the day, it's for our community.
Yes.
We don't wait for the teachers to learn or be trained. It's We have to be mindful for ourselves and them as well, because it's not their fault that they were not trained, and it's
Mm.
not their fault that they don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so just to add on, which is my last question to both of you guys. You sort of like already touched that a bit about that, Armani, but what do you think is the ideal future for accessibility in Malaysia? I mean, not even in Malaysia, probably to the whole entire mankind. Yeah, what is the ideal future? What do you guys think about it? We will start with Armani, and then Celina can uh, add on about it.
My goal with Natsini is, related to that. Like, ideally, I wouldn't want to be pushing just our disabled artists. We should be looking at art as a whole. We shouldn't be like focused on looking at what makes people different. What makes people different is what's unique to them. That means, we celebrate that. But at the same time, that shouldn't be the focus. And accessibility plays a large role, because when you give accessibility is providing them information and content that are usable to as many people as possible, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you do that, you are more inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
When you're more inclusive, you get more ideas, you get more progress in the world. So I want that to be the ideal future that we have.
Nice. Well said. Yeah, and Serena.
I guess my ideal future is, two things, um, but sort of interrelated. It's like, maybe hopefully there will be lesser stigmas around how disabled people should sort of live, because currently, I think even in the UK, people sort of still think, oh, some disabled, if you're disabled, you should just stay home, and there's no need to sort of consider their needs, or they're not capable to work. And, they very much are. And when I say disabled as well, I'm also including like neurodivergent and people with chronic illness who hinder their you know, whose day to day might be sort of hindered. So and you know, I really want to emphasize on Armani's point, just, you know, that is just so important. You know, when more of us normalize this, it becomes an everyday thing, like, you know, how now we don't even think twice about wearing a mask. And so I guess I end on, you know, just as wearing a mask is a form of care, so is making the work accessible. And yeah.
Great, great. Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for sharing, both of you guys. And I think, yeah, again, we are trying to move forward the progress and be mindful and aware about this. But yeah, I mean, it's a process. Even us at Immersio and also Filamen, I think we're not perfect. We do face some difficulties. Some of our visitors who use wheelchair, the other day, they only managed to actually go around on the ground floor level because we haven't had the lift to elevator on the building itself, so they miss out on the first level and second level. What we did basically is try to help them and navigate them around, and at the same time share all the videos and picture that we have for the first floor and second floor exhibition to just share with them, and we take time to talk to them and so on. We felt so bad that we haven't got to bring them up, but the idea is actually at least you try to do something with the you know, space and the resources and the whatever you have around you to make them feel better. Because I think the whole idea is about, you know, making it more warm for people to like just experience things, and not to like be so hard about yourself in terms of like, oh yeah, you need to make this, you need to create this, and so on and so on. But I think that process that you went through to make sure that, you know, everyone is inclusive, that's more important, I guess, right? So I guess that's about it. That's our sharing. That's like, yeah, one and almost half hour that we have. Thank you so much. And for those who also listening, I think it's midnight in UK right now, right, Celina? So like,
Yes.
thank you so much for like, you know, staying up for us. And yeah, it's like early morning here in Malaysia. We also very eager to know what's happening in our country right now. So thank you so much again, both Armani and also Celina, for sharing. And I think hopefully we can actually have this conversation more, and again, yeah, create more awareness around accessibility, whether it's physical or digital. And I guess that's about it. Thank you so much, guys. We'll catch up soon, and yeah, let's take a picture. Last one. Yeah.
Thank you, Shahrin.
Yes.
Thank you
All
for
right.
watching.
Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. Alright, okay, cool. Okay, thank you so much. And yeah, I hope everyone you know, gain something from this sharing and talks. And feel free to contact both Celina and Armani through their social media. Alright, thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Celina.